$30. Rifle included, Jebediah spat. Ruthie didn't flinch, just stared at the sheriff's boots. Another sale concluded. But Eli saw something those vultures missed. Beneath the bruises, a spine of iron. He bought her silence. Not out of pity. God knows he'd seen enough suffering to turn blind. No, he saw a spark. A banked fire that could burn the whole damn county down. Little did they all know, especially those smug bastards laughing in the saloon, that her quiet kept a promise. They had no idea how her quiet kindness would change everything. You see, Eli was smart enough to bet on controlled burns. The sheriff stood nearby, uncomfortable in his own skin, scratching behind his ear like he wanted to vanish. He signed her over legal, the sheriff mumbled. Technically, he sold his claim on her upkeep. Says she's barren. No good to him no more. Eli didn't speak. He looked at the woman on the ground. Mud clung to her hem like ash. She had a black eye. Her lip was split and a slow line of red worked its way down her temple. But she didn't cry. She stared at the ground like she was listening for something deeper than words. You buying or not? The sheriff added, glancing back toward the saloon where Ruthie's husband had stumbled off laughing. Someone got to take her. Eli reached into his coat, pulled out a wad of bills, laid them in the sheriff's palm without counting. Get her off the ground, he said. She comes with me. That was how it started. No wedding, no papers, no name change. Just a trade made on a cold afternoon while cattle bellowed in the distance and the snow threatened to fall. His ranch was a day's ride north, past the canyons and creek beds, up into the wide spaces where the wind never quit and the hawks flew lazy circles overhead. He didn't speak much as they rode. Neither did she. Ruthie clutched the wool blanket he'd given her, riding side saddle on a bay with tired eyes. She winced when the horse stumbled, but otherwise made no complaint. Eli studied her from the side. She was small but not fragile. Wiry like she'd done hard work once and forgot how to stop. Her hands were scarred along the knuckles, and one wrist looked wrong, like it had been broken, and left to heal crooked. He didn't ask questions. He let the silence grow until it filled the spaces between hoofbeat tats. That night they reached the ranch. It wasn't grand, no mansion, just a main house, a barn, 2 bunkhouses, and a stretch of land that rolled into the foothills like an untamed thought. Eli's cattle were lame but plenty. He had money, but not the kind that softened a man, the kind that stayed quiet in the bank and let him sleep without debt. He showed her the spare room, gave her a flannel shirt, and told her she could use the wash basin. You ain't got to earn nothing, he said. You don't owe me. She looked at him like she didn't believe it, but she said, thank you. Her voice was, not from crying, but from disuse. The first month, she didn't leave the house. She swept the floors even when they didn't need it, cooked simple food with quiet precision, cleaned things that hadn't been touched in years. She kept to herself, but Eli noticed the changes, the way her limp faded, the way she stopped jumping when the wind slammed a shutter. He never laid a hand on her, not once. Some nights she stood at the window for hours, watching the hills as if waiting for something to come out of them, something she didn't yet understand. He let her have that space. It was a Sunday when she followed him out to the barn. He was mucking out a stall, sleeves rolled up, shirt stuck to his back with sweat. She stood in the doorway, arms folded, chin lifted like it hurt to be proud. I can help, she said. I ain't broken. He didn't argue, just handed her a pitchfork. They worked side by side until the sun hit the horizon and turned everything copper and rust. She didn't speak much, but she smiled once. That night she ate more than usual. Eli drank coffee and watched her. Why'd you buy me? She asked, sudden as gunfire. He looked down into his cup, thought about lying. Instead, he said, didn't sit right. What he did to you? She didn't smile at that, but her shoulders dropped a little. You can stay, he said, long as you want. Ruthie nodded. I'll earn it, she said. Eli didn't argue. He let her believe what she needed to. Summer bled into fall. They rode together, drove cattle, fixed fences. She learned to shoot. He taught her how to gut a deer, skin it, salt the meat. Sometimes she had nightmares. Once he found her in the barn, curled against a bale of hay, shaking like a broken wire. He didn't touch her, just sat beside her until the shaking stopped. You ain't back there, he said. Ain't no one common for you now. Her breath slowed. She nodded once. I believe you. He didn't know how much that meant, but he remembered the way her voice sounded when she said it. Like trust was a bone she dug up with her bare hands. By winter, folks in town started whispering. That rich cowboy took in a broken woman. That barren thing he keeps on his land like a dog. Eli ignored them. So did Ruthie. But she started walking straighter, wearing her hair down. One morning she met his eyes across the breakfast table and didn't look away. He felt something then. Not pity, not debt, something old and wounded and warm. He cleared his throat. You ever think of leaving? He asked. Not anymore, she said. She didn't smile, but her hand brushed his when she passed him the coffee. It stayed there a little longer than it needed to, and neither of them moved. By the second winter, Ruthie had taken root. She knew the ranch better than most men who'd lived their lives on land. She could rope a steer, shoot a hawk out the sky, and gut a boar without flinching. But it wasn't skill that changed things. It was how quiet she got when she was thinking, how deliberate she moved. Like every step was chosen, not taken. Eli noticed the men at the Stark auction looking at her different now. Not like a cast-off, but like a mystery they hadn't earned. She still didn't speak much in town. She walked beside Eli when he went in for feed or salt, but her eyes stayed on the dust. She wasn't ashamed, just watchful. Inside, she changed. She kept a ledger now, tallied cattle births and fence breaks, ran the household with the calm of someone who'd stopped waiting for the world to get worse. But Eli knew some things didn't heal. They just stopped blading. It was February when her old life came clawing back. The man arrived late, drunk and loud. Her husband, not by law but by bone, he rode into town bragging about what he'd done, boasting how he'd sold his woman for a rifle and hadn't missed her a day since. Said he heard the rich cowboy up north was keeping her like some stray pup. Said he'd come to collect what was his. He kicked in the saloon doors and waved a yellowed paper with her name on it. The sheriff didn't stop him. Too much whiskey and not enough backbone. That evening, Eli found Ruthie sitting on the porch rail, hands tight in her lap. She'd heard. Her eyes were hard, not scared, just cold. You want me to handle it? He asked. She didn't answer at first, then she shook her head. No, I'll go. He frowned alone. I said, I ain't broken. He looked at her, the way her jaw set, the way her hand twitched near her belt like she was ready to draw. Then I'll ride behind you, he said, just in case. They found the man in the saloon shouting at the barkeep and slapping women on the backside like they owed him something. Ruthie stepped inside like she owned the walls. Eli stood in the doorway. He didn't draw, just watched. The man turned, froze. Well, well, he sneered. Ain't you turned soft, living off cattle and cowboy? She hit him fast, hard. He went down like a sack of bricks. The room fell silent. He rose slow, spitting blood, pulled a knife from his boot. Bitch, he snarled. You signed me away, she said, stepping forward. You lost the right to call me anything. You were mine. I was hungry. Then she drew her revolver. Didn't point it. Just let him see the truth in the metal. You come near me again, she said. You'll find out what being nothing really feels like. Eli didn't move. The man backed out, cursing, holding his ribs. Ruthie holstered her gun. She turned to Eli. Let's go. He nodded. The saloon stayed quiet behind them. Nobody asked questions. On the ride back, snow fell in long, quiet sheets. Eli looked over. Her shoulders were loose, her mouth soft. You all right? He asked. She thought a moment, then nodded. Yeah, I think I am. That night he left the door to her room open a little, not wide, just enough. In the early hours she stepped through and lay beside him without a word. They didn't speak. They didn't touch. They just breathed the same air, slow and steady. He didn't fall asleep for a long time. Not because he was restless, because, for the first time in years, he felt something loosen inside. Spring came late. Ruthie planted wildflowers behind the barn near the fence, where the wind always blew hardest. Eli watched her from the kitchen window. She moved different now, not careful certain. When he came out to her, she was kneeling in the dirt, hair tied back, a smudge of earth on her cheek. You thinking of staying for good? He asked. I've been here, she said. He nodded. Then you ever think about us? She turned, looked at him full. Every damn day, He stepped closer. I didn't buy you to keep you. She stood, brushed her hands. I know. I'd tear that paper myself if it meant you stay by choice. She stared at him, then reached into her pocket, pulled out the crumpled deed, the one her husband had signed over in town that day, ripped it in half, then in quarters. Let the wind take the pieces. I'm here because I choose to be. He didn't smile, just took her hand, held it like it was the most delicate thing he'd ever known. The flowers nodded in the wind behind them, and neither one let go. They didn't call it love, not in words. It came in the way she touched his shoulder before dawn, the way he left coffee warming for her on the stove, the way their silences folded around each other like blankets too worn to replace. Ruthie took over the bookkeeping, the wages, the hiring. She made sure the younger ranch hands washed behind their ears and didn't cheat the feed tally. She was good at running things, not because she was loud, but because she missed nothing. The men respected her. Even the older ones who'd once called her the bought woman now tipped their hats and said, "Ma'am." No one dared cross her. Eli kept his distance where he had to. He let her become what she was becoming without asking her to explain it. She didn't belong to him, but he'd started to belong to her. The trouble started with a fire out near the northern pasture. 3 cattle burned alive, trapped against a fallen fence. Someone had cut the rails and left oil-soaked rags in the grass. Eli stood staring at the blackened field, jaw locked. It's a message, he muttered, but I don't know who's sending it. Ruthie knelt in the ashes. Her eyes scanned the ground like she could read footprints in smoke. Someone's testing us, she said, checking how soft we've gotten. We ain't soft. No, she said, but they think I made you that way. That night she cleaned and oiled all the rifles. She kept one at her side when she slept. Eli didn't argue. 2 weeks later, they found the fence at the creek line cut again. This time, no fire, just a calf with its neck broken and a strip of skin peeled from its back like a warning. Ruthie stood over the carcass, fists clenched. This ain't about cattle, she said. This is about pride. Eli nodded. Mine or yours? She didn't answer. But that night she saddled a horse and told Eli she was riding out. Where? He asked. Back to a place I left behind. Might be someone there with a grudge. Someone who remembers my name. I'll ride with you. No, she said, this one's mine. She rode south alone, past the broken fields and old mining camps where a younger version of herself had once bled and clawed to stay alive. Back then she'd been Ruthie Lalare, a girl with bruised ribs and a crooked wrist sold between men like cattle. Now she wore a gun and silence like armor. She found what she was looking for in a town called Winton, a man named Pike Hatcher, not her husband, but worse in some ways, a traitor, a whisperer, a man who made a living moving human wreckage from place to place. She found him behind the livery, oiling his saddle. He didn't recognize her at first. Then he did. His hand went to his belt. She had her pistol on him before he blinked. You sent someone, she said, to scare me off the ranch. He licked his lips. Not me. I just passed a message. A Hoo-Tool man up north don't like you having a place. Says a woman like you don't belong on land like that. What man? Pike hesitated. She shot him in the leg. He screamed. You've got another, she said coldly. Use it. He told her the name. Harlan Nash, big rancher, North Ridge, claimed Eli stole grazing rights when the river shifted during a flood. Ruthie didn't wait. She rode through the night. By dawn, she was back, mud on her boots, guns still holstered, but dirty from use. Eli met her on the porch. Did you find what you needed? He asked. I found the reason they think I'm weak. He didn't ask for details. She reached into her coat and tossed something at his feet, a strip of cloth branded with Harlan Nash's crest. They don't stop, she said. Not unless we make them. Eli looked down at it, then up at her. Are you sure? I didn't come here to play house, she said. I came to survive. He nodded once. That night they planned. The first step was to cut off Nash's water. The river ran narrow in spring, and a well-placed dam would ruin his lower fields. Ruthie mapped it out. Eli got the dynamite. They didn't speak as they worked. The blast came at midnight. By dawn, Nash's men were riding hard for answers. They found nothing, just dry soil and tracks that led nowhere. Nash sent a rider to the Kavanaugh ranch. Eli met him at the gate. "You looking for a fight?" the rider asked. Eli tipped his hat. "No, but I'll finish one." The rider left, but war was coming. That week, Ruthie trained the ranch hands, taught them to shoot from cover, where to hit a man to make him drop without killing. She moved like someone who'd lived through sieges. The men followed her without question. Even the oldest among them started calling her ma'am with something like reverence. Eli watched from a distance. She wasn't the woman he'd found in the mud anymore. She was something stronger, something carved. And she was his, not by purchase, by choice. The first bullet didn't come until dusk. It winded through the wind and cracked the weather vane clean off the barn. No warning, no rider on the ridge, just the sharp report of a long rifle echoing across the valley. The men ducked. Ruthie didn't flinch. She was already running, barking orders like a commander, hair flying loose from her braid. "Sniper on the south slope," she said. "High ground." Eli followed without hesitation, rifle in hand. They knew the land better than Nash ever would. He had numbers, but they had terrain and memory. She led him through the wash, up the shale cut where the horses couldn't follow. He saw it then, glint of metal between the scrub, the shooter. Ruthie raised her gun and fired once. The man tumbled, limbs loose, rifle still strapped to his chest. She didn't stop to check him. He's the start, not the end. The siege came 2 days later. 20 men on horseback, bandoliers, rifles, torches, Nash's brand on their saddles, and the smug certainty of men who'd never lost a thing they didn't deserve. They stopped outside the gate just past rifle range. Nash rode in the center, thick-necked and clean-shaven, with a white hat that looked wrong on him. Eli stepped out alone. Nash smiled. "You're sheltering a thief and a Benny Kavanaugh." "She's neither," Eli said. "Then she won't mind answering for what she's done." Eli shook his head. "You come through this gate, you'll answer for it." Nash leaned forward. "You going to let a woman fight your war?" "I'm letting her finish it." A shot rang out. One of Nash's men screamed and fell from his horse, clutching his thigh. Ruthie stood on the porch behind Eli, rifle aimed, smoke curling from the barrel. Nash turned red. "You want to die over her?" he snarled. Eli didn't move. "I already live because of her. Dying don't scare me half as much as losing her." Nash spat. "Next time we come, we bring fire." They turned, riding off, but not far. They made camp in the hills. Ruthie watched the smoke rise from their fires that night and didn't blink once. She didn't sleep. She sat on the edge of the bed, oiling her revolver, checking every bullet. Eli came in slow. "You should rest. So should you." He sat beside her. "Do you regret it?" she asked quietly, taking me in. He stared at the floorboards, only that I didn't do it sooner. She swallowed. Her hand reached for his and didn't let go. "I'll kill him if I have to," she said. "I need you to be all right with that." "I want you to live," he said. "Whatever that costs." They fortified the ranch. Ruthie had the hands dig trenches near the north side, stack sandbags by the barn, lay iron spikes on the road leading in. She knew war like some women knew cooking. She didn't blink when she spoke of blood. The younger men watched her like she was more legend than flesh. But Eli saw the cracks. He saw the way she paused at night standing in the barn too long. The way she pressed her palm against the colt's neck like she was grounding herself. Like she was afraid if she stopped moving, she'd disappear again. She didn't say it, but he knew. Fighting this war meant stepping into the woman she once had to be, the one who learned to survive with nothing but her hands in silence. He hated it, hated that the world needed her sharp to stay safe, but he didn't stop her. The fire came the next night. Nash's men rode in under the new moon, quiet as wolves, flanking from the west, where the creek line made a natural funnel. They tossed burning bottles into the hay store, tried to drive the cattle into chaos. But Ruthie had anticipated it. Men were waiting in the shadows. They lit the backfires, turned the cattle with flares, blocked the riders with buckshot and hard steel. Ruthie moved like a phantom. She took out 3 men herself, one with a clean neck shot, another she dragged from a horse and hit with the butt of her rifle. She wasn't graceful. She was devastating. When dawn came, 5 of Nash's men were tied and bleeding. The rest fled. Nash himself was among them. She knew why. He was waiting, watching, saving himself for the last moment when it would hurt the most. 2 days passed. The ranch held. Ruthie sat on the porch, boots propped on the railing, bruised but calm. Eli joined her. "They'll come back," he said. "I'm counting on it. Why not run?" She turned to him. "Because if we run, we're just buying the next fight. If I leave this land, I go back to being a ghost, and I won't do that again." He nodded. "I want to marry you," he said. She blinked. "No papers, no priest, just you and me and the earth under us." She stared at him like he'd be bared his chest. "You don't need to save me," she said. "I'm not. I'm asking if you'll stay beside me while I save myself." She looked away, jaw tight. Then she stood, took a knife from her belt, cut a lock of her hair, handed it to him. "I do." They stood in the morning sun, hands dirty, faces tired. But they were whole. No crowd, no vows, just survival and a promise forged in ash. The final confrontation came not with thunder, but with silence. 3 nights after Ruthie and Eli bound themselves without witness. The wind died, the birds vanished from the trees, and the dogs refused to bark. Eli stood at the barn door, rifle in hand, as the horizon held a darkness that was too still to be night. Ruthie came up behind him, her breath calm, boots laced, revolver at her hip, and that knife, the same one she'd used to cut her hair for him, strapped at the back of her belt. "Nash is coming," she said. Eli nodded. This wasn't about cattle or water or even land. This was the last gasp of a man who couldn't understand how a woman he dismissed had risen, stayed, and ruled. They came on foot this time. 6 men, Nash among them, walking with the certainty of snakes through the long grass, their spurs quieted, their mouths tight. Ruthie and Eli met them at the eastern fence line. No ambush, no backup. Nash stood 10 feet away. His coat flapped once in the breeze, then hung still. "You got no claim," Eli said. "I don't want a claim," Nash answered. "I want her dead." Ruthie stepped forward, then draw. Nash looked past her to Eli. "You let her speak for you now." "She speaks for herself," Eli said. "Always has." Nash's lip curled. "I should have killed you when your man first walked away from you, Ruthie. Should have cut you open and buried what you were before it grew teeth." "I remember what you are," she said. "A coward in a big coat." She drew before he could blank. The first bullet hit his thigh. The second caught his collarbone, driving him back into the dirt. His men raised their weapons, but Eli already had his rifle leveled. "You'll die for him," he asked, "or walk away breathing?" None of them answered, but one by one they dropped their guns and backed away. Nash writhed, groaning in the dust, hands clawing for a pistol he no longer had. Ruthie walked to him slow. "You were right about one thing," she said, kneeling by his side. "What I used to be is dead." She slid her knife from her belt. "Clean, quiet. But what I am now is worse." He tried to speak, but his breath was leaving him. She stood and turned. "Leave him," she told Eli. "Let the worms teach him the rest." They buried the weapons the next day, not out of shame, but to say the war was over. Eli burned the blood-stained rags and buried the spent shells behind the stables. Ruthie washed her hands in creek water so cold it stung the bones. The ranch healed slowly. The cattle calmed. The men stayed on longer than they were paid to. There was something sacred now in the dirt, something neither bullet nor fire had touched. Ruthie built a small garden by the kitchen door, just herbs and onion bulbs at first, but they grew. Eli found her one afternoon sitting beside it, hat pulled low, a sprig of rosemary in her mouth. He sat beside her. "I don't dream of running anymore," she said. He nodded. "You dream at all?" She thought about it. "Sometimes I see that first night, the mud, my hands, you. I see it too." He said, "It used to make me wake up screaming." And now she smiled just a little. "Now I wake up and reach for your hand." He took it. There were no vows to make, no prayers to say, just dirt, breath, and time. And in time, Ruthie became legend. Not the kind told in barrooms or written in dime novels, but the kind whispered by women passing through with nothing but the clothes on their backs and fury in their hearts. She was the one who made it, not because she was saved, because she saved herself and taught others how. The girl who was bought became the woman no one could afford to lose. And Eli, who thought his heart was buried with the war, with his brothers, with his silence, found it again in her. Not by kindness, but by fire. They never left the ranch because they didn't need to. Everything they'd lost was gone. Everything they were building had already begun, and the land bruised and burned, open to them like a wound, learning how to scar.